Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be speaking to South Africa on Sunday night. Never take 2 or 3 days to do something that you can take 7. What is our president going to talk about? Well, it's quite clear that there are 3 major issues that sit on his desk for him to deal with. And I thought that the best thing for us to do here in the Political Insider is to get some help in decoding the 3 issues that need some kind of clarity in this country. Firstly, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to do this in 3 episodes. First part, we're going to deal with the revelations that General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi came out with last week about complicity within the halls of government and crime syndicates in South Africa, and he named names. Then we're going to deal with the government of national unity and whether it can survive all of these crises. That'll be in our 2nd episode. In our 3rd episode, we're going to deal with the US tariffs that have been imposed on South Africa and what the economic implications are for South Africa. So please watch all 3. They're going to be coming to you one day after another. We're going to kick off today with our 1st episode. And to help me decode these problems, I've got the original Political Insider, and that's Kuhle and Kamani joining me. Kuhle, welcome back to the Political Insider.
Good to have you back. Thank you, Mike.
Let's talk today about General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi and what he had to say about crime, the complicity of people, especially the Minister of Police. And in this case, he actually named names. Very, very rare. Mm. What exactly was the revelation that came out of General Mkhwanazi?
Well, Mike, I think basically one of the first things that you can clearly see is the SAPS department, and one of the many departments that we have in South Africa are outright corrupt, filled with corruption all the way through. You've got a point where if you listen to what Mkhwanazi was actually saying, even former ministers are implicated in this Cat Matlala, Brown Mkhotsi issue, that is going on. So you've got one thing is clear here is you've got a couple of guys that are behind the reason why SAPS is failing. If we have to focus on today's issue, which is SAPS, Mkhwanazi and Mkhunu, that this is the major reason. We've got tenderpreneurs becoming service providers for SAPS. We've got the National Commissioner with his own allegations. You've got Mkhunu, who claims to not know someone, but, well, he said, oh, no, I met him, once, or I know him through A and C. And then you've got Mkhwanazi dropping bombs, which is also suspicious in itself, because you've got to ask the question, why?
Yeah, well, I made the point that perhaps what Mkhwanazi is doing here is he's buying a big insurance policy. Go out on a public platform, you talk about these allegations, and that way you don't die in a car accident, right? Because it becomes a little bit suspicious if something had to happen to him today. But in this particular case, he mentioned the minister, Senzo Mkhunu, and obviously he's only been in that position for a year, and this situation has been running for longer than a year, which brings a former minister into the fold, which brings his handlers and his mates into this. What makes this a little bit more explosive is that in both cases of Bekitele, our former Minister of Police, and Senzo Mkhunu, big allies of Cyril Ramaphosa. That's going to have some political implications.
Definitely. I think, Mike, one of the important things to remember is that Ministry of Policing, same as Defense, tend to always have ministers who are allies with the president. Remember that we had Fikile Mbalula at a point in time. And if you notice something, like saying that Fikile Mbalula has now become the spokesperson of our government, Fikile Mbalula became very scared. If you watched the press briefing that he did on the Mkhwanazi issue, the man was jittery, shaking, and he couldn't say much, but he basically bashed Mkhwanazi, and that's what we saw. So basically what you can see here is there's been a long line of people in that policing department that have been implicated with drug dealers, that have been implicated with drug pushers, or various criminal syndicates. And this thing goes back to say, Mike, that, crime could be solved, but our politicians do not have the will to deal with it. You know, you look at this guy, Kat Matlala, you know, I was reading a little story that I got from an old friend of mine, and which basically says Kat Matlala allegedly was the John Wick from Mamelodi, you know, the guy that used to, well, because it's on YouTube, we can't use the word delete people, you know. Was just deleting people and was seen as this hero because he would delete other criminals. And now we have to link that to Mkwanazi. He was deleting other criminals and he was seen as the hero at that point in time. And the guy has got a long history from cash and transit heists, allegedly, yet again, allegedly. Now, you wonder that, okay, the ANC saw this. They realized, okay, perhaps we can bring this guy in with Brown Mokhotsi. They'll do some of the fundraising, like Edwin Sodi and the rest of the guys. We'll protect them. They can continue with their businesses. And that's just going to be culture, Mike. It's shocking to see the criminals that are holding back the progress of this country.
Yeah, and it's starting to look more and more, you know, it's like a mafia movie with the ANC at the top of this mafia organization, subcontracting to various people, and it's all in the pursuit of either personal gain or funding the party, which we know has got an insatiable need for money.
True. And you know, when it comes to funding parties, many people take this lightly, but most of the corruption that happens, right, in South Africa is due to people trying to get resources for the party. Does not matter which party it is. It really is. You go to KZN, where it's a group of people trying to raise money for IFP, you know. Same as with the ANC. You see it in the municipalities. These are organized crime syndicates that are run by politicians, and there is no political will to stop it, which is very unfortunate, you know, because you've got mass murder. You ask yourself, how do you have certain crimes? I mean, for Cyril Ramaphosa, Mike, he can't even come out and pretend like he didn't know what was going on. I mean, imagine Mkwanazi, the provincial commissioner, says there are politicians and members of parliament, right, who are involved in drug cartels in Gauteng. This guy is all the way in KZN, but he also knows what's going on in Gauteng. So, Panyaza Lesufi, Cyril Ramaphosa, they can't come here with that old story of we didn't know, we are shocked, we will, you know, apply our mind. You know, Ramaphosa is like that. He'll apply his mind till the next ANC conference. So that's not going to work. And the cat is out of the bag and it's a big mess. Ramaphosa is still thinking what lie he's going to cook up for us this Sunday.
Yeah, it's because obviously, you know, it must be quite tantalizing. You've got these massive budgets because, you know, South Africans still largely pay taxes. So the government still has a budget of, over R1 trillion, whatever it is. You're the guy who can give out the tenders. So, you know, you get a little bit on the side or the party gets a little bit of funding. It's kind of difficult to resist. And but the question is that there was, until this time last year, there was political cover for the ANC.
Yes.
They had the majority in parliament. They could shut down any inquiry. It was well within their grasp to do that. They've lost that ability now, haven't they? Because what we've got is a completely different political landscape. ANC only has 40%. We've already seen the parties lining up, Democratic Alliance, Mkhonto we sees where EFF, to say there must be an inquiry.
Can I tell you something very interesting, Mike, on what you're saying now that the ANC is at 40%? Do you know, now I'm going to have to, because, you know, for legal purposes, we have to use the allegedly word, right? So before 2016, right, when allegedly in Tshwane House, which is the headquarters of the municipality in Tshwane, ANC was running the most of the metros with an outright majority. And then 2016 happened, they lost, right? It is said that when they lost and the transition was about to happen, people took files and dockets and put them in shredding machines because they didn't want the DA or the people that were going to come in next to have access to what was really going on. So when people got into departments, the new political heads got in there, where's the information? What's going on? Things were just missing. So the ANC, that's where they are at the moment, When you lose 50% and now you've got people that can actually sniff and see that now something is wrong here. Something is off, and we've got to ask the question, what's going on? You go to KZN Provincial Department of Education. My good acquaintance, Francois Rogers, told me the other day, he says, Kuhle, one of the first things that I found was there was something written staff loans, right? He says to me, I was asking myself, is the government giving loans to civil servants? What's going on? And basically staff loans was a little line in the budget drawn for the errors in the system, for the fact that the system had not captured that people had died or resigned or left the department. Now, all those inefficiencies are being revealed because of GNU. Today, we understand budgets because of GNU. Today, Mkhwanazi can come out and speak bravely against Senzo Mchunu and the president because of GNU. He knows that there are other people inside there that can protect him. And I mean, we saw, like you said, the EFF, MK, Action SA even had a march from Mkhwanazi. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? So there are people actually protecting the guy.
What do you think our president is going to say about the Mkhwanazi affair when he makes his long-awaited statements? Do you think he's going to suspend anybody? Or do you think he's just going to try and sort of have a commission of inquiry?
Well, Mike, it's very interesting. He can't do another commission because he's already got a national dialogue.
And he's running out of ex-judges. Yeah,
exactly. Now you've asked yourself the budget for that. Where are you going to find the budget for that commission? So I predict he could suspend Senzo Mchunu, or he could actually suspend both of them. He says Senzo Mchunu and Mkhwanazi sort of take a break. He'll come with that thing for peace and clarity and the stability of the department. He'll come with some talk about, in order for things to be efficient, I'm putting these two on, paid leave or whatever, while we still look into what's going on. Because the thing is, he can't really leave Senzo Mchunu there. You can't. You really can't. There's no option. You can't even make it up. You can't even lie for the guy. There's no form of explaining. And you've got Chief Justice Maya, came out yesterday with saying that, Mkhwanazi needs to provide, evidence on these things that are happening. And, Mike, I think parting shot on this one point is, I do think that South Africa is getting to a point where we could see vigilantism becoming the new norm. So you're going to have these politicians that, say things that spark up everyone, or reveal certain things. You heard JJ speaking about the Zuma interview, saying that, if we could hear it, we'd all be like, shocked. That's going to happen. That is going to continue creating these organizations like Dudula and all that stuff. And one day we're going to get to a point where, because the way society is moving and government's inefficiency, we're just going to have, private security, private everything. There'll be no reason for government. And I do think that's where South Africa is going, that we'll really not have a reason to even have a government because everything is being privatized. And that's what Ramaphosa has to deal with now.
Well, let's keep an eye on this, because we must remember that thanks to our visit of our president to the White House, where South Africa's crime deficiencies were put on show. In actual fact, remember the president said we don't have a farm murder problem. We murder everybody. That was the defense for the farm murders, the allegations of the farm murders. So therefore, he knows, we know that everybody has got an eye on South Africa's crime and our police service. America has already made that a precondition that certain crimes get priority. These aren't even being mentioned. There's a lot to play out here. Let's have a look at what the president says. But I think I agree with Kuhle. We're going to see a couple of suspensions, an attempt to kick this can down the road. It's not going to happen. General Mkhwanazi wouldn't have said what he said unless he's got a lot of evidence that he's got stashed away somewhere. Otherwise, it would have been a very dangerous thing for him to do. this is going to play out. Thanks, Kutle, for coming, and we will see you in the next part of this discussion. Thanks for joining us today.